Now back to Inside Real Estate. Here's Mike the Realtor.
Hey folks, we are back. It's Inside Real Estate with Mike Kruizinga. Website InsideRealEstateRadio.com, InsideRealEstateRadio.com. Time for another great mortgage segment with Terry Wagner from Supreme Lending Rockwall. Website RockyMartin.com, RockyMartin.com. Rocky's with an IE. And the phone number is 866-607-5667, 866-607-5667. Terry, how are we doing?
Good morning, Mike. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm excellent.
Good.
So, what are we talking about today for the folks?
I thought I'd bring just something that's kind of off the wall, something we don't really talk about too often, and that's what's called a non-arm's length transaction. You know what that is?
Let me see. If I got my arm's length out this way and then I take it halfway in. And
You'd think. It's a funny name, huh?
It is.
It's crazy what we call some of our mortgage things. A non-arm's length transaction, basically what that means is if it's an arm's length, that means you don't know anyone involved in the transaction. So a non-arm's length is you have a relation with the seller of the property, whether it be family or let's say it's a landlord. Let's say you've lived in this house for a while and your landlord. There's a relationship there.
Yeah, sure.
So that is a non-arm's length transaction. And there are certain restrictions that apply to a non-arm's length transaction. So it comes into play when you're doing business with a family member, a relative, defined as your spouse, your child, your parent, your fiance, domestic partner, any other individual that you have a relation to the borrower by blood, adoption, or legal guardianship. Okay. So what we're looking at, a lot of times this comes into play on an FHA loan. If you are purchasing your parents' home and you're doing an FHA loan, you have to have 15% equity in that house. So what that means is you either have to put 15% down or they have to gift you that equity.
Interesting.
So it's kind of odd. It doesn't come up a whole lot.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But it has come up quite a bit. And some of that comes into play with your down payment. Now, a lot of times when someone's buying their parents' home, it's pretty easy to just show it as a gift of equity. Mm-hmm. But if you're not purchasing your parents' home and it's still an arm's length transaction, we kind of have to find a way around that.
Okay.
So it's just something good for everyone to know that's out there, and it can come up on occasions.
Now, I'm guessing in a situation where, generally buying your parents' home, the equity's probably already there.
Right.
Or that can be easily gifted. But I'm guessing a situation, I'm just thinking, off the top of my head, maybe where this might come up as an issue is if maybe they're buying their folks' home because their folks are in some sort of issue,
right?
Financially, and the home needs to be purchased, and they're going to keep it within the family,
right?
And then maybe they're tight on
maybe
it.
There's no equity.
Okay,
yeah. You have to come up with the 15% down.
Okay.
We could switch to a different loan type, but that's one thing to kind of keep in mind that is a restriction and a requirement that we have to keep those things separate.
And it might be situational. The kids might be FHA only buyers.
Right. Exactly. That does happen.
Okay.
Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to non-arm's length is your down payment. Source and ownership for the funds of the down payment, closing costs, and reserves have to be well documented. And if you're purchasing your parents' home, the down payment can't come from them unless it's a gift of equity. So again, you have to set that up the right way.
Okay.
When it comes to, let's see what else we have. We're restricted with some of the down payment requirements that we have. So if you've got, let's kind of switch gears a little bit on a conventional loan. If your parents are giving you the money for the down payment, but they're not giving you a full 20%, you have to have your own 5% assets yourself, unless, of course, they're giving you the full 20% down. Okay. That's part of this as well. Borrower must have their own 5% for the down payment unless the gift is for the full 20% down. We've talked about gift of equity. That's allowed. And a lot of times how we're able to set that up, again, back on buying the parents' house, we can set it up as a gift of equity. We can also set up with the parents giving you the closing costs. And a lot of times we're able to set that transaction up with no money out of pocket.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, that's a great point there on being able to potentially buy the folks home with no out of pocket, assuming there's equity in the property.
Right.
And look, thinking about this, your folks are in retirement age, and it's an investment, and but they do have a little bit to pay off on it. Maybe it just might be a good strategic move to keep the property, in the family.
Right.
Going back way in time, properties just stayed in families.
Right. These
days you don't see that really.
No, you don't see that a lot.
You don't see properties sort of handed down, and you don't see properties just stay in the family for whatever reason. People, just kind of up and move, and families are a little more disjointed in this day and age. But, real estate is a huge part of wealth. And
yes, it is.
Keeping a property in the family for a variety of reasons. Maybe the folks maybe just be a better idea, to have it go on to the kids. They could do it for pretty much little down. Right. Now, there are other ways to transfer a property, easier to family members. You got the Ladybird deed, things like that out there, and we could talk about that in other shows. But this option in particular, folks could get into that home. I don't say get into it because they may not move into it. The folks may continue to live there, but purchasing the folks' home could be a little down, zero down.
Well, and another part that I wanted to talk about was the down payment and how we go about sourcing that down payment. A lot of folks think that they can just get money from their parents or another entity that they have to get that money from. But we really have to do a lot of documentation on that down payment. So let's talk about that for just a minute, Mike.
Okay.
Anytime you're purchasing a home, we are going to look at, we've talked about this so much, we're going to look at everything that you have. We're going to look at all your documentation, but one of the things we're going to look at is the last 2 months' bank statements. So if there are deposits in those bank statements, we're going to have to source where that money came from. And not only are we going to have to source it, but we're going to have to provide documentation on where that money came from. So mom and dad just can't give you $10,000 and us be okay. I mean, we may be okay with that, but we're going to have to document it. We're going to have a gift letter generated by us that both the donor and the recipient are going to have to sign.
Right.
But that's not the end of it. We're also going to have documentation from the donor showing proof that they have those funds to gift.
Right.
And this gets confusing to folks. I'm like, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be able to give it to you.
Right.
But basically what we're looking at anytime we underwrite a file is fraud.
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. Where did the funds come from?
Where did they come from?
They have to be tracked.
So we want to make sure that those funds didn't come from another party to this transaction. The seller of the house, which leads us back to the arm's length transaction. We're trying to look for that as well. So we're looking for, did the seller of that home give you money? Did the real estate agent give you that money? You probably haven't given anybody money for the down payment, but if there's fraud involved, that could be the case.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, because money can come from anywhere.
Right.
You're right. I mean, there's real estate agents that will maybe try to help facilitate a transaction,
right.
and there's just a lot of different ways to do things under the table.
Right.
Obviously everything I do is above the table.
That is correct.
And but there are a lot of agents that do things under the table. And, there's just, look, folks, there are a gazillion ways to get something done. If you're going to work with folks that'll do things in the gray areas.
Right.
Right. And in our business, real estate and mortgage, that's not something Terry and I can do. So that's why when we're talking about asking you questions about where funds are coming from, it's just part of the business. We have to know that it's legitimate,
We're not trying to be nosy.
Right.
We just have to, we are trying to be nosy. We're having to get all of the information to present to our underwriter. So,
that's right.
We're just going to know everything there is to know about you.
That's exactly right.
But one caution
and get used to it.
That's right. But we'll forget it all after you buy. We'll go on to the next one. But one caution that I wanted to give to folks is, because sometimes you just get random odd checks in the mail. I got a check last week from a city that I lived in 20 years ago, and they said I had put a deposit on something, and I don't know why I got that check. But so I went deposited it in the bank.
Yeah.
So if you're buying a house, you have to source that. So be sure. I know a lot of people aren't good at record keeping, but be sure and keep copies of those checks, or at least the check stub. Put them in a file marked house, or something along those lines. If you're planning on purchasing in the next several months, because you may have to go back and prove what that check was for or who it came from.
Right.
Because what happens is if you can't source those funds, and let's say it's a large check,
right,
and you can't source it, we have to take that money out of your assets as if it wasn't there. So then what happens if that creates a shortage on your closing costs, on you being able to pay what's due at closing? We can't use it. So just kind of a word of caution. If you're looking at buying a house and you get any random odd checks,
of size,
keep a copy of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you're selling a house and fixing to buy another one. If you're selling that house, you're going to get your escrow refund check. You're going to get an insurance cancellation check. There's several checks you're going to get for refunds from selling a previous home.
Yeah, that are out of the ordinary,
right,
not normal income.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just have to source all of that. And again, we've gone over it many times. You just have to be able to document anything that we're telling an underwriter.
Yeah.
So
okay. Well, to kind of wrap up on this segment, the non-arm's length. So basically anybody have some sort of relationship with, that's got to be disclosed, and we just got to talk about it and figure it out.
Right. It could have additional guideline requirements that we need to pay attention to. It's not just, and don't keep that from your loan officer only later to be discovered that the person you're buying the house from is, your cousin.
Right.
That may be not something that you brought up during the initial contact, but bring that up to your loan officer because it's important, and it could come back to delay your closing.
Yeah, I mean, if we find out all of a sudden that you're buying your pastor's house,
right?
Well, that's a significant relationship,
right?
Now, if you're wondering what types of relationships, just disclose everything. When it comes to buying and selling real estate, disclose everything. But significant relationships are obviously going to be the ones where issues could come up,
right?
And
if we're doing stuff above board, like we've talked about, we can find solutions to those issues that come up. But it's better to find solutions at the beginning of the transaction rather than a day before closing.
Yeah, versus scrambling at the end and
exactly.
potentially jeopardizing, your purchase or your sale.
Exactly.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Hopefully that's as clear as mud, and it gives you some good information on the non-arm's length. Folks, we've been talking with Terry Wagner over at Supreme Lending Rockwall. Hey, phone number where you can catch her, 866-607-5667 for all of your mortgage needs, refinance, Texas cash out needs, purchasing. You want to definitely talk to Terry. Folks, Inside Real Estate, Mike Kruizinga. We'll see you in a few.